Hey there, boat race fans. Yeah, I got an idea. I was out here working in the yard this morning. Man, it's nice here in southeast Texas. It was in the 60s this morning. Golly, that's, for late September, that is awesome around here. So, yeah, we got out and planted a few plants and made some pots up and made the wife happy. But anyway, while we were working, I looked at my phone, and a good buddy of mine, a boat builder, good friend of mine, David Baker, came up with an idea. I said, somebody needs to make a video on the different models of Yamato engines. Yamatos came out, I don't know, I remember when they first came out, and back when I was racing, I don't know, 70s, I'll have to look it up and see. But these Yamato engines were made, the first ones we got over here was a Model 80, which is a 20 cubic inch engine. And man, they were $500-600. They were, back then in the B class we were running Mercuries and, little 20 Mercuries and then the 25 Mercs. And we loved our Mercuries, man. I mean, it's a religion, right? About the Mercuries. But one of the guys, I think out on the West Coast, put one of those Yamato 80s on the stand and cranked it up, wired the throttle wide open without any water in it, right? Wide open. Picked it up and carried it and threw it in the water with it running wide open. And of course, you'd have been looking at the inside of a Mercury. You'd have been looking at rods hanging out of that thing, if you'd have done that. And he put it right back up and dried it out and did it again. And so Yamatos became, as you can imagine, they were cheap and they were brutal, very tough little motors. And so Yamatos became very popular in the racing scene. And what I want to do in this video is David Baker had hit me with one of the comments and said, man, he said, I've been out of racing for a while and there's so many Yamatos now, not sure about what all the sizes are and what all the models are and what's the difference between all of them. So in this video, I'm going to kind of gather up some of that information. Not that I know it, but I'm gonna research it and probably do several parts of the video. Maybe in this video do the Model 80 and a little bit of background about where they came from, and then proceed right on through to modern day. I think the 331 is the new one. They had the 80, the 102, the 202, 302, 321, 331. I'm sure I'm missing one in there somewhere, but they went from 20 cubic inch to 24 cubic inch and stayed that way from the 102 on. But they did make a lot of different changes to that engine that I think would be interesting to document. So thank you, David, for that idea. It's a good one. I'm gonna look up some of that information, and hey, we'll put it down on tape. See if it's working. Yeah, it's working. David Baker himself. Give me a cord, buddy. Boom.
Gee.
Glad to have y'all, man. Look at all these boats.
Here for a change, huh?
Yeah, boats seeing the sunlight. How's that?
We got lost for 18 years, but we found our way back.
Cool. I appreciate David coming up with this idea about Yamato motors. I'm going to get with David, and we're going to do a lot of stuff on his boats too. Yeah, David's a fine guy. We're going to get into his stuff later on. Right now, let's talk about Yamatos. Man, I'm going to let the pictures of some of these early models scroll through there, and found some really interesting background on Yamatos that I'm going to read off, and while these pictures are running. Yeah, it can be argued that the country of Japan, their support of the Coyote pari-mutuel outboard boat racing literally saved stock outboard racing. In the mid-1970s, new stock outboard motors are few and far between. With the bulk of the engines in use having been built in the mid-50s, it was difficult to generate new interest in the sport. Enter the Yamato Corporation of Japan and their exportation of the Yamato 80 engine into the United States. The engines we're showing here are previous to the Yamato 80, but the Yamato 80 will come up here in a little bit, and you'll get to see that motor. These are the predecessors to the Yamato 80 that was exported in large scale. Almost overnight, racers and would-be racers could buy a virtually new engine for $400 to $500. That was just amazing. The engines were run for about 1 year on the Japanese Coyote circuit, and then they sent them back to the factory and sold as refurbished engines as surplus around the world. The result was the introduction of the OSY 400 class C-stock hydro in the USA, and now that's the world's largest motorboat racing category. That little 33 horse Yamato has been a world changer as far as stock and super stock outboard racing. The Yamato 102 was introduced in the mid-80s. After the introduction of the 102 in the 1980s, 10 years later, they came out with some updated versions, the Model 202, the 302, the 321, and now the 331, I think, is the latest model that they're putting out right now. Today's 102s and 80s, 302s, 202s can be found actively raced throughout the world in really competitive classes. I really enjoyed looking at some of these old Yamatos, stuff I've never seen, never was imported. What you're looking at here, though, is the Yamato 80. It's the first model that was imported and raced in the US, and I think the UK as well. But man, that's a fine motor, a little 20 cubic inch, 20 horse is what they call it. And this is a 102. This is the later model, the next model that came out in 1980, and they upped it to 24 cubic inches. Still has point ignition, and this is the Model 202. It also has points in the ignition, and it's the same cubic inch. Some upgrades, and this one is the first one. This is the 302. I think it's the first one with electronic ignition. I know there were some changes in the exhaust and even down housing depth. And here is the last model I've got a picture of, which is a 321. It's also an electronic ignition. I understand there's a 331 out there now that I don't have a photo of yet. I think they're just hitting the US. Yeah, I kind of got excited after my yard work out there and came in, took my shower, and man, I did some research, and I hope you enjoyed kind of looking at some of the older motors, you know, the history. I really enjoyed understanding and seeing some of the history. I know I went through it really fast, and my intent is to go back and do an in-depth dive on from the Yamato 80 on up, because that's what we race. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Yeah, I like the idea of some in-depth dive on these Yamato motors that we're running now. And thank you, David, man, for the idea. It's a good one. So hope you enjoyed it. And hey, we got a lot more to come. See you later on the Redneck Boat Guy.